Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Something's wrong. Huo Yuhao immediately descended after this simple observation, before he flew towards the Heavenly Soul Empire's rickety structures. He used spiritual detection, and discovered that the Sun Moon Empire's soldiers had long been standing guard in those old structures. There were many large machines inside those structures, and even though they weren't as advanced as the machines that the Sun Moon Empire had just constructed, he could tell that they were targeted at the ground. Resources, yes, resources. Huo Yuhao didn't go any closer. He was afraid to startle his enemies, and he was a little afraid of Zhu Zi. Her devious trick had bested him once, and he had to be more careful in dealing with her. If he couldn't tell what was going on with the Sun Moon Empire, could he not tell from the Douling Empire's side? Even though they were all bordering the extreme north, their objectives were likely to be the same. He would naturally discover something if he went to observe the Douling Empire's barracks. Huo Yuhao turned around as he contemplated, and covered several dozen kilometers in the blink of an eye. The Douling Empire was clearly unaware that the Sun Moon Empire's great army had arrived. In the end, they were separated by national borders even though they were so close to each other. The Douling Empire was still upholding their agreement with the Heavenly Soul Empire, that they wouldn't send any scouts to conduct reconnaissance within the Heavenly Soul Empire's territory. Huo Yuhao was full of admiration for Zhu Zi, as he confirmed the barracks' positions on this side. If the Sun Moon Empire had come any closer to this side, they would likely have been discovered by the Douling Empire. The Sun Moon Empire's current position was close to the other side, but they were somewhere where it wasn't easy to be discovered. There was no doubt that, with the Sun Moon Empire's Fire Phoenix Legion, they could destroy the Douling Empire's army without breaking a sweat. But if they did that, they would undoubtedly alert the Douling Empire. Judging from the current situation, the Sun Moon Empire Zhu Zi evidently didn't want to be exposed so quickly. Too cunning. Even though he didn't want to admit that Zhu Zi was one of the Sun Moon Empire's generals, he had to admit that she was very talented in military matters. She was definitely superior to him. He landed close to the Douling Empire's barracks, and his spiritual detection immediately stretched over the barracks like an enormous web. He quickly discovered what he needed to know. The Douling Empire's barracks had clearly been around for a relatively longer time. There was an army of 2,000 standing guard on this side, and there were also many workers hard at work. The surface of the earth was freezing. However, the temperature beneath the ground was a lot higher. There was no doubt that this was the publicly recognized location to work on, and they were excavating some minerals from beneath the ground. Rare metals. Huo Yuhao finally got his answer. He hadn't expected that the Sun Moon Empire's objective was a vein of rare metals that had appeared on the borders of the extreme north. The Douling Empire was 30 kilometers from the Sun Moon Empire's camp, and about 50 kilometers from the Heavenly Soul Empire's old barracks. There was no doubt that the Heavenly Soul Empire was originally mining here as well. This meant that the underground mine could possibly stretch out 50 kilometers. How abundant did those rare metals have to be? It was no wonder that the Empress, Zhu Zi, would venture out in person. The resources here were equally important to the Sun Moon Empire. They were very advanced in soul tools, but crafting soul tools, especially high-level ones, had an equally heavy requirement for materials. Huo Yuhao's eyes were opened, and he finally understood the Sun Moon Empire's objective. No, I cannot let them succeed, no matter what. If the Sun Moon Empire manages to obtain the incredibly large amounts of rare metals here to support them, who knows how many more soul tools they can craft to use against the Doluo continent's 3 empires. I have to find a way to ruin her plan. However, Huo Yuhao was no longer so worried when he discovered Zhu Zi's plan. The reason was simple: mining a mineral vein like this required a lot of human and material labor. They couldn't achieve anything overnight. The Sun Moon Empire had to mine over a long period of time. Zhu Zi and the others should first be establishing a base for excavation, before they would start as quickly as possible, so that they could transport the rare metals back to the Sun Moon Empire. Since that was the case, he had a chance. A cold grin appeared on Huo Yuhao's face. I can't deal with the Sun-Moon Empire's army by myself, but just as the Snow Empress said, we are in the extreme north. This was the Snow Empress, the Ice Empress, and the Skydream Iceworm's old home. Without discussing the great boost in strength for someone who possessed an ultimate ice martial soul, this was the world that the Snow Empress had ruled over a long time ago. The Snow Empress status in the extreme north was like the beast god's status in the Great Star Doe Forest. Snow Empress, Ice Empress. Huo Yuhao channeled his thoughts and summoned the two empresses. Two lights flickered as the Ice Empress and the Snow Empress emerged from his body at the same time. Ever since they came across the manifold mysterious ice essence, the two empresses had been integrating with the ice essence, and their origin powers were now a lot stronger than before. Even though they were still energy bodies, their forms were no different from material forms when they emerged from Huo Yuhao this time. The Ice Empress blushed faintly as she saw Huo Yuhao. This was the first time that she was facing him after she had revealed her true emotions when the Snow Empress provoked her. Huo Yuhao naturally wouldn't tease her at a time like this. He lowered his voice and said, Ice Empress, Snow Empress, I have figured out the Sun-Moon Empire's objective. They are trying to extract the rare metals here. How do we destroy their operation, so that they can't take these resources away? The Ice Empress resolved her embarrassment as she rushed to speak. Isn't that simple? We'll chase them all away, and then we'll extract it for ourselves. Huo Yuhao's facial muscles spasmed as he watched her speak so casually. He thought to himself, everyone who is in love seems to be blinded whether they are soul beasts or humans. What about you, Snow? The Snow Empress thoughts should be more normal. The Snow Empress said plainly, Ice is right. We'll chase them away, and this place will belong to us. This is our territory anyway, and anybody who wants to come into our place to pillage is asking to die. Ahem. Huo Yuhao almost choked on his own saliva as he forced a laugh and said, the two of you think too highly of me. I am very ashamed. I don't have the strength to help you guys chase them away. The Snow Empress' answer was plain. Have you forgotten that I said this is our territory? We are the true dictators of this place. Even though we have become your spirits, and we no longer possess the strength we did back then, it doesn't change the facts. A thought occurred to Huo Yuhao. Are you saying that we should draw on? The Snow Empress tilted her head slightly, as she pointed with her right hand toward the ground. The snow and ice around them instantly transformed into cyclones as snowflakes danced through the air. The surrounding temperature immediately plummeted as her eyes became a little listless. It feels so good to be back. This is our home. The Ice Empress nodded and chimed in. Yes. This is the first time that we've been back ever since we left with Huo Yuhao. Let's go, Yuhao. We'll let them hustle. You'll follow us into the extreme north, and we'll go into the core circle. All right. The two queens had spoken their piece. There was no other reason for him to hesitate. Yes. The Ice Empress and the Snow Empress had ruled over the Ice-type and Snow-type soul beasts in the extreme north's icy plains for several 100,000 years, and their authority in this place ran deep. Even though they had become spirits, they were still dictators in this place. Huo Yuhao soared into the sky as he flew towards the extreme north's core circle. Inside the Fire Phoenix Legion's commander's tent, Zhu Zi calmly gave order after order. These orders included several important traps. She understood Huo Yuhao too well, and from her perspective, he was extremely intelligent, even though he sometimes did things based on his emotions. Zhu Zi knew that capturing him again, after failing to do so the last time around, would be even more difficult. She didn't want to be enemies with Huo Yuhao, but she was very clear that he would not give up on messing with her army when she didn't kill him. Furthermore, with his intelligence and abilities, it wouldn't take long for him to figure out what she was doing with such a large army. In the end, something like this was very hard to hide. Zhu Zi didn't intend to conceal her intentions any longer. She became a little excited and enthusiastic when she found out that Huo Yuhao was her opponent. Perhaps this was the best opportunity for them to clash. Such a long time had passed, and Huo Yuhao's strength had actually grown to such a level. She could feel that he was at least a soul sage, and he also had twin martial souls. His spiritual type martial soul should have given him the soul skill that allowed him to conceal himself, and his ice-type soul skills naturally came from his ultimate ice marital soul. It was no wonder that his abilities were so powerful. The extreme north could be said to be his turf. But, so what? I will never lose. Juzi's subordinates had all left, and she stood up by herself as a faint smile appeared on her face. Will you still come, Yuhao? I am eagerly waiting for that to happen. To be honest, I am not willing to become your opponent, but this is truly very interesting. We can have a great battle here in the extreme north, and we shall see who will overpower who. I will not give you a chance to give me any more trouble if you end up in my hands. At least, I will only let you go after I complete my objective here. Do you know, I am regretting not bringing you back last night a little, but there are some things that you don't know about. Juzi smiled mysteriously as her thoughts stopped there. There was a secret deep in her heart that only she knew. Yes, she was the only one who knew, and she would protect this secret forever. Yuhao, do you know that the happiness that you have given me will remain by my side? Time passed day after day. From Juzi's perspective, Huo Yuhao should be making his move soon. At least, he should make some kind of probing attack, and attempt to destroy some of their surveillance soul tools on this side. His concealing abilities could be maximized only when there were fewer surveillance soul tools. But what caught her a little off guard was that she was waiting around as 5 days flashed by. Huo Yuhao didn't appear in the end, and their plan was successfully carried out. They were starting to extract the metals from the mine. The roads were too far, and in addition to the terrible conditions in a cold and dreadful place like the extreme north, transport was very inconvenient. Therefore, Juzi had decided before they departed that they would extract, refine and process everything on the spot. They would only transport all the rare metals when refinement was complete. Xu Qianran was the only person who knew that she was here in person, while all the rare metals that they would extract from this operation would all belong to the Empire's royal family, so that they could strengthen their control over the imperial family. Everything was arranged after she had a discussion with Xu Qianran. Has he really left? That's not quite like his personality. He has always been the kind to become braver as pressure piles on, and he will never admit defeat. Even if I am his enemy, there's no reason for him to leave just like that, since he is so determined to oppose me. Juzi was as dejected as she was suspicious. Truthfully, she would rather clash with Huo Yuhao than receive news once more that she had lost him. In the end, she had absolute authority over the army here, and all she had to do was not hurt him, even if they faced each other on the battlefield. She didn't feel very comfortable that he would leave just like that. This was how complicated a woman's emotions were. Of course, Huo Yuhao wouldn't give up. After traveling continuously for a long time, and 3 days after departing the Sun Moon Empire's great army, he was inside the extreme north's core region. Huo Yuhao didn't run into too much trouble as he flew forward. Typical soul beasts couldn't threaten him at all with his strength, and even those that were relatively stronger would immediately scamper away when he imitated the Ice Empress aura. The Ice Jade Empress Scorpion was one of the extreme north's 3 heavenly kings. Most high-level soul beasts from the extreme north were very familiar with the Ice Empress aura, and that was the reason why Huo Yuhao's imitation was almost always successful. The temperature dropped even more as they entered the extreme north's core region. There were hurricanes and biting winds high up in the sky. Huo Yuhao didn't know how to fly when he was last here, so he didn't feel how powerful these hurricanes were. This time, he immediately suffered a blow as soon as he flew into the extreme north's core region. A powerful gust of wind swept over, and Huo Yuhao couldn't resist at all as he was thrown higher into the sky. This terrifying gust was incredible, and contained vigorous explosiveness. If Huo Yuhao's body hadn't been sufficiently tough, and if he hadn't possessed an ultimate ice martial soul, he would have been torn to pieces. Huo Yuhao was barely able to land on the ground. He was overcome with fear with his knowledge of powerful individuals. That gust of wind was probably equivalent to an 8-ringed Soul Doluor's attack at full strength. He had just entered the extreme north's core region. Wouldn't it become even more terrifying if he went deeper in? No wonder he almost never saw any soul beasts flying in the sky here. It lived up to its name as a forbidden grounds for humans. The extreme north's core region shared a name with the Great Star Do Forest's slaughtering grounds. Even the Sun-Moon Empire's Evil Demon Forest was far inferior. In the end, the Evil Demon Forest got its reputation because of how powerful the Evil Eye Tyrant King was. The Great Star Do Forest's slaughtering grounds contained many savage beasts, and the threat in the extreme north's core region wasn't from its soul beasts, it was from its environment. In such an environment, even Title Doluor couldn't survive for too long. The air was incredibly dry, while the chilly winds cut like blades. Not a single stalk of grass could be seen, and the incredibly low temperatures could continuously burn down a soul master's soul power. It was almost impossible for them to live here. Furthermore, ice-type soul masters were a minority anyway. Therefore, very few soul masters came to this place to hunt soul beasts. This was the reason why the overall strength of the extreme north's soul beasts had grown to such a formidable level over recent years. If not for the fact that this place wasn't that suitable for soul beasts to live, it probably wouldn't take long for the extreme north's soul beasts to catch up with the strength of the Great Star Do Forest's soul beasts. Huo Yuhao no longer dared to fly in the sky with the lesson he had learned. He walked on the ground, and even though there were gusts of cold wind that cut through the air on the ground, they were much gentler compared to the winds in the air. Huo Yuhao had the Sky Dream Iceworm to protect him the last time he was here, and only then could he resist the severe cold. He was back here many years later now, and he felt a little strange. Back during the first time he was here, he was as weak as an ant compared to the other beings in the extreme north. Without the Sky Dream Iceworm's help, just the environment here would have killed him countless times over. 10 years later today, he had the ability to face this environment's dreadful conditions by himself. Furthermore, 2 of the extreme north's 3 heavenly kings were accompanying him. 10 years ago, him doing this was something that he didn't even dare to think about. Huo Yuhao didn't ask the Ice Empress or the Snow Empress anything else as they continued forward. The Ice and the Snow Empress would tell him when they arrived. He moved forward very naturally, as his eyes moved a little as he glanced towards his left. There was life rippling from that place, and those undulations were very intense. What's that? Huo Yuhao immediately used spiritual detection and projected it into the distance. He quickly saw several soul beasts. There were several extreme northern bears that were incredibly muscular. These bears were very large, at least 7 to 8 meters tall when they stood up, while their bodies were extremely thick and tough. These soul beasts had thick fur, and their strength was terrifying. Furthermore, their explosiveness was so vigorous that they could spring over short distances as quickly as agility-type soul beasts. They were high up in the food chain within the extreme north's icy plains. There were 4 bears here, and 3 of them were grown, while there was only one that was relatively smaller, only 3 meters tall. It looked like a baby bear. Full-grown extreme northern bears had to have at least 1,000 years of cultivation, but one couldn't underestimate their threat just because they were only 1,000-year soul beasts. The extreme northern bears in this place were like the dark golden terraclaw bears in the Great Star Do Forest. 1,000-year extreme northern bears could rival normal 10,000-year soul beasts, and even though their fighting strength still couldn't match up to that of the dark golden terraclaw bears, very few soul beasts dared to provoke them. At this moment, these 4 extreme northern bears were charging at Huo Yuhao at breakneck speed. Huo Yuhao instantly felt a little exasperated, because he remembered the extreme northern bear's characteristics. Powerful soul beasts like that in the extreme north had very sensitive senses of smell, because the extreme north always had a scarcity of food. Therefore, their sense of smell became very strong through their consistent evolution. They could smell other living beings from kilometers away, and it was clear that they had discovered him and were treating him like prey. Huo Yuhao didn't run, because he remembered something else when he recalled some information about the extreme northern bears. When he was undergoing training in the Ultimate Soldier Plan, his teacher that was teaching him about food told him that the extreme northern bears' paws were the most delicious amongst the other bears. That was because they were living in the extreme north, and under continuous refining from the severe cold, their paws were especially fat and juicy. They could be cooked with certain special methods, and they would taste extremely delicious, while being extremely nutritious for humans. They were very beneficial to soul masters. However, nobody really dared to try to kill them, because they were naturally very ferocious and powerful. They lived in the extreme North's core region, and soul masters' appetites were not enough for them to give their lives in this place. Therefore, the extreme northern bear's paws were sold at extremely high prices in every empire on the continent. There are 4 extreme northern bears. Since you're treating me like food, heh, then I will not give you a chance. Let's see who gets to eat who in the end. You can't hurt them. The Ice Empress and Snow Empress voices rang out in Huo Yuhao's spiritual sea at the same time. Huo Yuhao's mouth twitched as he attempted to resist them. Why? Only they can treat me like food, but I'm not allowed to eat them. What kind of reasoning is that? The Ice Empress grunted coldly and said, if I say no, that means no. There aren't many soul beasts in the extreme north in the first place, and these bears are considered one of the rarer species. If these bears can grow until they reach 10,000 years of cultivation, they will become the main fighting force of the extreme north's soul beasts. Are you saying that you want to launch a beast wave? Who are you going to target? Huo Yuhao said exasperatedly. The Ice Empress snapped, what do you think? Don't you want to deal with the Sun Moon Empire's army? You think you can do that by yourself? What? You can command those ice bears? Huo Yuhao answered in shock. The Ice Empress laughed coldly. She said nothing, but the arrogance in her eyes was very evident. The 4 bears were charging very swiftly, and it didn't take long before they appeared in Huo Yuhao's vision. The extreme northern bears were very muscular, while their limbs were very well developed, but their brains weren't that simple. The 3 grown bears swiftly dispersed, and the burliest one was in the middle as it dashed toward Huo Yuhao. The other 2 wrapped around towards the flanks, while the smallest one followed behind. They were surrounding him. Huo Yuhao wasn't worried at all. The only thing he was thinking about was the bear's paws. What a pity that they were so delicious. The largest bear charged first. When it saw Huo Yuhao, who was standing there calmly, and the Ice and Snow Empress behind him, it was also momentarily stunned. It was the first time that it had come across humans that were so calm. Soul beasts that had relatively lower cultivation, like these, had never seen the Ice Empress or Snow Empress before, especially when they didn't have this form before. They were in human form now, and they were no different from humans when they were deliberately hiding their aura. Roar! The extreme northern bear roared as his majesty was disregarded. It charged at Huo Yuhao with his muscular body, and its enormous frame stood up as it swung its paws down at him. Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection had been trained on it the entire time. He could clearly feel that when the bear was using its strength, its thick fur was immediately charged with intense soul power, and every single hair became like needles. Its fur was its best defense. There was no question that this bear was a kind of soul beast where its own body was its main strength. The extreme northern bears shared similar characteristics as the dark golden terraclaw bears, except it didn't have the dark golden terraclaw bear's fearsome claws. Huo Yuhao glanced at the Ice Empress and the Snow Empress, and when he realized that they didn't intend to do anything, he couldn't just stand there and let the bear smack him. He went forward to face the bear with form like a demon, and he grabbed the bear's right paw that was swiping down at him with both arms as he suddenly used his strength. Even though Huo Yuhao's martial soul didn't have anything that was based on strength, he had obtained part of the Golden Dragon's strength after Wang Chua had sacrificed herself for him. In addition to the fact that he had 7 soul rings, he definitely wasn't afraid of the bear in front of him in terms of strength. Huo Yuhao swung the bear's enormous body that was 8 meters tall into the air, and sent it crashing into the icy surface, as an explosive sound rang out. The other 2 bears that were charging in from the flank were taken by surprise. However, they accelerated as they charged toward Huo Yuhao furiously. This is how a male and 2 females are like. Huo Yuhao's body flickered, and he didn't take them by force anymore. Instead, he ran behind the Ice and Snow Empress. If you 2 aren't going to let me eat bear paws, shouldn't you at least be doing something? The Ice Empress grunted as she unleashed her aura that she was originally suppressing. An unrivaled aura was immediately released, as a tremendous pressure that belonged to 100,000-year soul beast bore down on the 3 ice bears. The 3 bears that went berserk seemed like they were doused with a bucket of cold water as their hysterical aggression immediately disappeared. They growled softly as they stumbled and retreated. The bear that Huo Yuhao had slammed into the ground rolled onto one side, and its manner was almost a little comical. The tiny bear that was following from behind halted immediately when it felt this aura. It covered its head with its paws and lay prostrate on the ground with its buttocks pointed high up into the air, just like that, and that was as amusing as it could get. She's the Ice Empress after all. Huo Yuhao heaved a sigh of admiration. The Ice Empress' eyes flashed with green light as a strange sound rang out in her mouth. This sound had a very intriguing and alluring quality, and it was apparently the soul beast's language. The 3 bears nodded continuously when they heard her voice. A superior that was giving them so much pressure meant they didn't even consider resisting. The 3 bears got to their feet after a moment as they swiftly ran away into the distance. The Ice Empress stared at them as they left and muttered under her breath, "It feels great to be back. Snow, how nice would it be if we were still the dictators of this place? We don't have any natural enemies here, and nobody is around to oppose us. This is our paradise." The Snow Empress floated next to her and smiled as she replied, "I beg to differ. I have begun to understand humans ever since I've walked into the human world. Over the past months and years, we have always detested humans, and we hate them for disturbing our way of life. However, we are disturbed considerably less by soul beasts here compared to the Great Star Doe Forest. Even though I have lost my memory after following Yuhao, I can still see the outside world very clearly as the Snow Lady. We have to admit that humans possess intelligence and creativity superior to ours, and we can only adapt to nature, while they can change everything. This is the reason why humans can conquer the entire continent even though they were so weak in the beginning when they were born. They are just too creative. If I were given a chance to choose again, perhaps I'd choose to be a human." The Ice Empress' body quivered. She didn't think the Snow Empress would say something like that, as this wasn't the Snow Empress that she knew. The Ice Empress turned towards her, and her eyes were filled with astonishment. The Snow Empress smiled and said, "Are you surprised? Have you not seen through everything, Ice? Think about it, how long have we been living in the extreme north, and how long have we been ruling over this place? Haven't you had enough? Right now, I just want to use the remaining years of my life to experience other things, as much as I can. This is the only way for me to feel excited, and for me to feel glorious. I won't regret it even if Yuhao doesn't succeed in the end. Perhaps I will choose to compress my origin and fuse with another human when that happens, and I'll become a human once more." The Ice Empress said, "You've changed, Snow." The Snow Empress smiled. "Yes. I've changed. Otherwise, how could I allow you to be together with Skydream? Speaking of which, how is he worthy of you?" The Ice Empress blushed as she lowered her head. She had been concealing her emotions ever since that day, and she hadn't really paid any regard to the Skydream Iceworm. The Skydream Iceworm wasn't worried, and he just stuck with her every day and asked about her well-being. The Ice Empress' expression of her love gave him blissful happiness, and what made him even more excited was that the Snow Empress didn't stop them from being together. Instead, she was adding fuel to the fire. The Ice Empress said after a few moments, "Yes. You've changed, and I have too. Perhaps all this is because humans have affected us." She turned towards Huo Yuhao as she spoke. "I didn't ask any of you to change anything," Huo Yuhao said helplessly. The Ice Empress grunted and said, "We can see everything you do. You have been changing us through imperceptible influence." She paused for a moment after that, then continued, "Maybe I should feel fortunate, because you are the one who has shown us the world of humans. Before I met you, I had always believed that humans were tiny and pathetic with all their avarice, cruelty, and cunning. All they knew was to take from Mother Nature. But you have gradually changed my perspective after we met, and I have realized that there are humans like you who are determined with their emotions. Your creativity and your talent, and a great many other things, weren't bestowed upon you by me or the Sky Dream Iceworm. We are helping you, but the truth is that you've been helping us too. We have learned a great many things from you. Huo Yuhao smiled faintly and said, "Can you not be so touching? However, Brother Skydream should really thank me. Without me as a vessel, he wouldn't have had a chance of moving your heart." "Don't talk about him," the Ice Empress retorted bashfully. Huo Yuhao smiled as he continued. "Ice Empress, since you've already confirmed your feelings, why do you still choose to run away from them? In this world, no matter how powerful you are or how powerful we will become in the future, nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. Just like that day when I was surrounded by enemies on all sides. I would never have expected to land in a trap, and if I weren't lucky that day in addition to my appropriate response, perhaps I would have died. And your destinies would have changed because of my death." The Ice Empress frowned said, "What are you trying to say? Don't beat about the bush." Huo Yuhao said, "I'm trying to tell you that life is short, and we have to enjoy our happiness while we still can. Since you have already confirmed your feelings, why don't you treat them accordingly? Brother Skydream truly likes you, and since you like him too, then you should accept his feelings seriously." The Ice Empress blushed even more as she rolled her eyes and said, "You males just know how to help other males." Huo Yuhao chuckled, but said nothing else. He turned towards the Snow Empress and said, "What should we do next?" The Snow Empress smiled plainly and said, "We wait. All we must do is wait here." "Wait?" Huo Yuhao was starting to understand. It seems like the Ice Empress asked those bears to pass some messages along. Right at this moment, the Snow Empress' elegant frame suddenly slid backwards and drifted into the sky like an apparition. "Be careful, Snow Empress," Huo Yuhao hurriedly shouted at her. He had personally experienced how frightening those hurricanes were in the sky, but the Ice Empress revealed a mocking smile. The Snow Empress seemed like she didn't hear Huo Yuhao's voice as she floated into the air. She was just dancing in the air, and she stepped on nothing as she waltzed into the winds. She gradually released her aura. Her aura wasn't as intimidating as the Ice Empress, but Huo Yuhao realized to his surprise that everything dimmed when her aura was unleashed. The white snow disappeared. All the ice and snow became blue, and the figure dancing in the sky was the only thing that was white. Her long sleeves waved as white ribbons danced around her. Those blue snowflakes circled around her as they rippled and unfolded. The Snow Lady was like the spirit of the snow. Her wonderful posture made her seem like she had become the core of the extreme North's core region. Huo Yuhao's eyes were frozen. He had never expected someone to have such a beautiful posture, and that someone could be so alluring. The Snow Empress had unrivaled beauty. In this moment, she seemed almost completely immersed in her dance as the gusts in the air grew gentle. The temperature seemed to rise a little amidst the fluttering snowflakes. There was no warmth, but there was no coldness either. There was only a pure and refreshing coolness. The blue hue stretched far into the distance. Everywhere her eyes could reach had been tainted blue, while the sky and the ground could no longer be told apart. This feeling is just wonderful. Huo Yuhao believed, in that moment, that this was the most gorgeous scene he had ever seen. His heart was intoxicated in this moment, while the ice-type soul power in his body rippled along with the Snow Empress dance. This video will end here.